one and only Steve Coleman. I love the background, man. You're floating in space. How you doing, Coach? How are things?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Apologies for the background. I couldn't change it in time with the time. There's actually a Rowdies board behind me, but you can't see it.
No, it's all good because the last couple of chats that I've had with players on the team, it's just been a plain white background, and I've told Jake, like, we got to do a little something. We got to jazz it up a little bit,
Yeah,
man.
I feel sorry for Jake because behind me, he's got some lamp here to make me look much better looking, and then there's a board behind me, and none of them are working right
It's
now.
all
So,
good.
yeah, good times.
Yeah, the hat looks good, and Jake does a great job over there. First, before we talk about everything going on with the team, let's talk about the first pitch, man. Take me through the first pitch at the Rays game the other day. I mean, it looked good, man. The arm action looked good. As me as a former baseball coach, I love the whip. It looked good. Got the southpaw action. Take me through the first pitch. What was that like?
Yeah, look, they asked me at the beginning of May if I would do it, and I said, "Yeah, I'm happy to do it, no problem." You won't know this about me, but I was a cricketer, which you guys are just getting into it over here a little bit with Major League Cricket. But I
Yep.
was a cricketer back in the day, and I've thrown thousands and thousands of balls around in my younger days, so it wasn't so much of a big deal for me. And I said, yeah, I'm happy to. It'd be a really cool thing to have my son and my family come out and experience it on the field before the game and stuff. So I was happy to do it. And obviously we got moved back a little bit to the end of the month, but that was a cool experience. I loved it. It's something that I'll be able to tell people about. I got to throw the first pitch at a major league game, but our physio Dave Walker, it's 28 years in the major leagues as a physio, said to me last week, "You just got to be careful, man, because the plate's a lot higher than it looks on the TV." And and I said to him, "Yeah, look, it'll be fine, mate, no problem." So I actually stood at Al Lang last week behind the pitch there. There's obviously the old mound of the old stadium, and I stood on top of it and I thought, it's actually not that high. I don't know what he's worried about. And then I got to the mound on Tuesday night and thought, you know what, it's a bit higher than I thought it was. So I hit the catcher over the plate, but he did have to jump a little bit to get there. But as long as it didn't bounce, Aaron Guillen said to me last week that his actually bounced when he got to do it in his time around around. So like I reached the other end and I was happy to get off the plate and not disgrace myself. So yeah, very happy, cool experience.
Yeah, I had the chance last year to throw the first pitch of the Rays game, and I try to do a Hideo Nomo, old Japanese pitcher, try to make it all fancy, and I didn't bounce it in front of the plate. I bounced it to the side of the plate, and luckily Ryan Pepiot, the pitcher, kind of scooped it out of the ground. So all my friends were embarrassed. So I mean, they were embarrassed, not me. But it's a great experience to be able to do that. How's the adjustment been, to being here in the Tampa Bay area? I mean, obviously, coming here first year, and obviously the change, now moving over and now being the interim coach. What has it been like for you being here in the Tampa Bay in the community?
We love it. My family and I, my wife and my son, are massive beach lovers, outdoor people. So being in this part of the world is a real bonus for us. Obviously, the weather's great for the most part of the year. It's getting a bit hotter now, which is good. But we love the area. We were in obviously Virginia last year. I spent a year at Loudoun United with Ryan Martin and the guys up there and had a great time. And when the opportunity came to come to a club like the Rowdies, I grew up with a family who loved football and George Best and that kind of stuff. And obviously he didn't play for the Rowdies, but he's in a lot of those older videos that you see, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers against the Rowdies and stuff. So for me, coming to the Rowdies was an absolute no-brainer. And, it's a fantastic football club. I love the community. I love the fans, their passion. They're on my back a little bit at the moment to make sure the results can turn around, obviously. But, hopefully they can see that we care deeply about the success of this football club and we're trying to turn that around.
Yeah, and I always got the scarf here. I got my
I see. Yeah, nice.
My great grandparents are Mancunian, so I've been it's a tough putt for us on the United side. I mean, I'm the guy that wakes up at 6 a.m. to watch them play in Hong Kong and Malaysia.
Yeah, good on you.
I'm a maniac when it comes to stuff like that. One thing that I've learned about you is that you've really tried to learn about the club and its rich history, especially with this new role for you. How important is that for you to be able to kind of learn what the Rowdies are all about, not just kind of the recent history, but also going back to the 70s and, all the success that they had back then too?
Yeah, look, you'll have known about me. I'm a very proud adopted Kiwi. I didn't grow up in New Zealand, but I consider myself to be a very proud Kiwi. My family are New Zealanders. And when you're from that part of the world, the really important piece is around a word that's heard a lot, which is fuck a papa, which I spoke to Ryan and Drew on the broadcast a few times about this as well, which is essentially a legacy piece on you can't really know where you're going until you know where you're from. And, everyone has their own time in the sun to leave the place better than they found it. And you will have heard me talk about that a little bit, Jay, as well. And for me, you can't know where the future of the club lies until you know where it's come from. And, 1975 and the stories around entertainment and bringing football to Florida. And, I read last week that it was the biggest secret in Florida since the Manhattan Project, which I love the line around trying to bring it to the game. And, I've spent a lot of time talking to guys like Mike Connell and Perry van der Beek over the last little while to really get an essence of what this place is about and why it's so important to the people that come and support every weekend. And why ultimately at the moment it hurts a lot of people that we're doing what we're doing. And that helps us shape the future. And we've been able to build a little bit of a culture off the back of that. And, we're using Ralph Rowdy as a real signpost for that over the last few weeks. And look, ultimately, those things are not going to win us games, Jay. They're things that allow us to bring the group together and connect to our community and our past. But ultimately, we have to go far together rather than fast alone. And those things take time to manage. And sometimes the results don't match what's going on behind the scenes. But I think there's been a real push from everyone involved in the club at this point to try and get some of that essence of the the blue collar hard work back into the team, and not that it was necessarily missing, but just trying to find the essence of what that was like way back in the 70s and into the 80s and the proud history the club has. And I think we have to respect it, understand it before we can start to shape our future as well.
How hard is that too? Because with soccer being such a process over result driven game, you could play a fantastic game and lose 1-0, right? It's just, it's not like basketball where you're scoring 100 points or hockey, get a couple of goals and you can lose 6-3 and be like, hey, well, this guy did this. You may not see results for a couple of weeks, especially taking over, a club. Listen, and for those that are tuning in that don't really know, like the head man has a lot to do with, bringing in, there's not a huge front office, as in the USL Championship. Like the gaffer's really working close to bring in certain players to have everything work together. And I'm not blaming the players, but how tough is that, Steve, to be able to kind of take the guys now in your new role as the interim head coach and kind of change that, whether it's the shape of the team, whether it's guys playing in certain positions, whether it's guys playing or not playing? Like, how do you change that without just like upsetting the apple cart and changing everything? Because there are players there that have had some success, but obviously the results haven't kind of panned out the way you guys have hoped.
No, they're definitely not where we'd like them to be. And, people are frustrated with what they're seeing at the moment. But I think even the passing fan can see that in certain games, or no, not certain games, all games, there's been periods of play where, oh, that's the Rowdies. Here they are. Point to the first half against Miami, where we were, ruthless in front of goal and played a little bit deeper and picked them off on the counter. We were great for 45 minutes. And, even Louisville, we were really, really competitive for 65 minutes or so. And in every game, we've had large periods of games where we've been in the game, on top of the game, and in some cases in front of the game. But unfortunately, sometimes when you have injuries and you have limited availability of certain players that are impactful for the team, that it's hard to sustain those periods of time. And the trick then is to make sure that when you're suffering in those moments and you're under the pressure, that you don't concede and you don't let goals in. And unfortunately, we've not been able to do that over the last little while. Rhode Island, for example, we played pretty well in the game, very competitive, and conceded 3 goals from 35 yards out, all winning the top of the goal. And at that point, you sort of think, well, the performance is one thing. We're going to be judged on whether we win or lose games of football ultimately. But the goals that go in when you're bottom of the league like that, and then in that game we hit the underside of the crossbar and it bounced out, it didn't go in at 1-0 down. And you think, well, the game sometimes is a game of moments, and we've worked incredibly hard over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks to turn the tide a little bit, and the tide is turning. It's difficult to get points on the road. We got a point in Lexington at the weekend. We came from 1-0 down. Those things, I listened to a few things this week around, we struggled in Lexington, we got outplayed. Those are not the numbers that I'm seeing. Those are not the situations that I'm looking at. And we didn't create a load of chances, but we took one chance. But we've also created loads of chances in other games and not taken them. So I think some people need to sort of think about as you said there, the process over the outcome sometimes. And ultimately, we're going to be judged on the result. There's no question about that. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's important to manage the process as best we can to move forwards.
We just had somebody bring up, and I got the news before, Nate Worth getting called up. And what does that mean for that young man and, his growth to be able to get this opportunity to, anytime you can get a guy that, playing internationally or getting different outlooks of playing with different teams, like that can only help him going forward.
Yeah, what an experience for the young man. It's one that's was sort of thrown on us yesterday. We sort of got the news late yesterday afternoon that he was going, and okay, great, what a fantastic opportunity. And speaking to him yesterday morning, he's obviously very excited to get over to Switzerland and experience international football in a pretty significant tournament with the teams that are arriving for that tournament. So yeah, what a great opportunity for him to go and showcase himself on a world stage and an international platform. And it's a fantastic opportunity for him to do those things.
Yeah, for those that didn't hear, Nate Worth called up to the U.S. youth national team U18 in Switzerland for the UEFA Friendship Cup. And, I look at this team, and of course it boils down to, scoring goals. And one of the things that you and I talked about the last time over at Al Lang was, the position of Leo Fernandez. And this is a guy that's dealt with injuries, and, he's still, you hear, behind me when I'm at these games, and they just like, he's the guy that they expect to bring magic to the team. And it's been tough for him battling back to injury, but former MVP of the league, and you think that he would probably part of the recipe for the success going forward. This team compared to last year, obviously losing a guy like Cal Jennings is something that hurt, and you're expecting some of these other guys like Woob and Manu to be able to step up. And what do you got to do as a team offensively, especially to put those guys in a position to succeed? Because, Leo, you told me that you want him a little bit closer to goal, but he's also a guy that's able to whip the ball into the box pretty well. And that's how you guys scored to level up the game. So it's kind of, how do you find that balance to be able to, put your particular players in the right spot, whether that's on, in the starting squad or off the bench, but also make sure that you're doing what's best for the team. Because sometimes you would hope that they kind of work together, but it may not, you can only play so many guys,
Yeah, of course. Well, availability is the most important thing. So like, even for Leo, we didn't have him early season. He's battling back from an injury in pre-season. So once we got him back, it was about making sure he could maintain his fitness for short periods of time. And then it was about, okay, can we extend him a bit further? And, as sort of you've alluded to, MVP of the league, in the past, we want him on the pitch as long as he's able to sustain performance over a period of time. And, sometimes as you get a bit older, those things are not so easy. But, he's done a great job over the last 6 weeks. He's such a fantastic pro, first and foremost, to prepare himself for games and be ready and recover in the right way. And those things become more important, obviously, as you start to advance in your career. But we would like him closer to the goal. We would like him sort of more central to allow us to create chances. And as you've just said there, how do you create more goals? Well, you've got to put people in the right positions with the ball to finish those chances off. And our numbers in terms of chance creation have been pretty strong over the last little while. And it's about us converting those chances more often than not. And there are teams in the league that are overperforming in that number at the moment, and we're slightly under par, really, of where we'd like to be. And if we can level our numbers out, then we're gonna be competitive in every single game that we play. But guys like Leo being closer to each other, Ollie Bassett and Manu and Woobens closer together and connecting and combining in and around the centre of the pitch makes such a big difference for the way that we can do things. And then for the rest of the group, it's about making sure that we can find them in the right positions rather than them go searching for balls that they're trying to get because they're frustrated with the way the game's going. And, there's a little bit of discipline within that and a little bit of understanding more and more every week of the way we're trying to play and what we're trying to do. And those things, hopefully in the long run, will result in more positive results as we go down the stretch towards the end of the season.
Last one from me, Coach. South Georgia Tormenta FC tomorrow night. Again, get your tickets, rowdysoccer.com, 7:30. It's a Rough and Rowdies night at Al Lang Stadium. Does it change at all? I mean, can this be, because obviously it's not a league game, and there's so many league games left. So, obviously you look at the table, not where you guys want to be, but there's a path. You start playing some good ball here. But, can you use a cup game here to kind of either just kind of invigorate it? Sometimes cup games are during the week, right? This is kind of a cup game on a Saturday, so it would be kind of during a league game anyway. So what are you looking for tomorrow night to kind of spur you guys to play some better ball going forward?
Well, look, I think we've trusted our processes over the last 3-4 weeks around what we've been doing. As I said, we've performed well in parts of games. For us, tomorrow night is about making sure that we produce a performance that is a longer stretch of the game, as close to 90 minutes as we can do that. I think last week in Lexington we were a bit slow to start out the blocks, but towards the end of the game we were definitely well worth maybe 3 points, let alone one. But we've had times where we've not suffered in the game and been competitive. There's times obviously where we've been suffering and let goals in. So for us, tomorrow is another game of football, another opportunity for us to step forwards and progress. I talked last week about us making progress. Small steps are important. Tomorrow's an opportunity to take another small step forward towards the future of the football club. And the winning is obviously the objective all the time, but for us, the performance as well is important. We've worked really, really hard in the last couple of weeks around the things that we want to try and do and who we want to be as a team. And tomorrow night's another opportunity for us to showcase that in the best way possible on a Saturday night in front of our own fans. So, but it also gives us another chance to play in front of our own fans and have that 12th man behind us and cheering us on. And, in the times where we've been good in games, the Miami game, first half, the crowd and the drums and the smoke and the sounds, everyone wants to be part of that. And for us, it's about creating that atmosphere for the fans to be able to do that. And what I have noticed is everyone keeps coming back week on week to support the team. And, someone asked me last week about what we need to do. What's the message to the fans? Stick with us. Things are beginning to turn, and it may not feel like it now, but we are heading in a direction that is positive. And, we can create more nights like Miami, where 45 minutes of entertainment, goals and opportunities for the team to score. That's what we're trying to do all the time. But for us, it's also about making sure we're defending our own goal, making sure we're not letting goals in. And then we almost have the recipe for winning more games of football than we lose. And hopefully tomorrow night you'll see a more polished and more complete performance than it was the week before. And that's all we can do, is try and be better this week than we were last week.
Shout out to the Green Gold Army and Ralph's Mob and everybody there. And a big thank you to you, Coach. Tampa Bay Rowdies interim head coach Steve Coleman joining us on the program. Best of luck, not just tomorrow, but also the rest of the season. You'll see me out there a bunch over at Al Lang. Thanks so much for your time, Coach. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Jay. Talk to you soon.
You got it, buddy. Good stuff.